And it turns out that, again, the 6-part series,
Cliff
I thought it was
Barrackman
dead
number
by then,
one.
because I hadn't heard anything for months and months and months. And then, long story short, we arranged to film a pilot in Alaska on Prince of Wales Island. And they picked up Ping Pong Productions. Ping Pong Productions is a production company that is in charge of filming Destination Truth. And I think they do Dude, What Would Happen If, like some kids show where they blow stuff up and they think it's fun, because it is, probably. And so that's how I became involved in it at the time. We went to Alaska, we shot an episode, we got a little bit of Bigfoot action on camera, which was nice. We didn't film a Sasquatch, but we got some action. And basically Discovery Networks loved it, and they ordered 5 more. So I spent this past winter, most of February and March, filming those 5 extra episodes. When I do these episodes, I'm going to show you some behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm going to show you some data that we collected. I'm going to show them in the order that we filmed them, not the order that they're showing on television, just so you know. Bigfooting in TV, in some ways, is like oil and water. It's very, very difficult to have those two like verbs, I guess. Bigfooting is a verb, and I guess making TV is also a verb. It's difficult to have those two things mesh very well. Because, you know, bigfooting, my preferred method of bigfooting is going out alone, or maybe with one other person, sitting in the dark, listening. Well, and then, so we're gonna make a TV show, so I'm gonna go sit alone and listen with about 15 other people with lights yelling at each other and like deciding who's in charge and telling everybody what to do, and getting batteries all the time, and bringing trucks and vans and tech guys and that sort of thing. So those two aspects are very, very difficult to, you know, to like make happy with each other, I guess. And so that's on the right-hand side. That's part of the North Carolina episode. We're filming the television screens as we're doing the recreation when Bobo was. I don't know if you've seen the show or not. I wouldn't watch it unless I was in it. But they're filming the TV screen for when Bobo does his recreation of the Mike Green footage. Over here on the left, that's also the location, but this is the film crew. The film crew is generally made up of really, really good people, really, really hardworking folks. We're filming about 14 to 18 hours a day. I report at 11 o'clock in the morning, and you know we drive back to wherever we're sleeping at 5 or 6 in the morning. So it's that kind of day for me, and it's grueling. A lot of it is waiting around, but at the same time, you know, you're dealing with personalities and all that other stuff, and it gets very, very tiring very, very quickly. And actually, friends of mine dropped by during the first week of our shoot in North Carolina, and they all unanimously said, "Cliff, you look like crap." I said, well, thank you. Our first stop was North Carolina. So we got in touch with Mike Green, and Mike Green took a small piece of thermal video, you know, a number of years ago. That's Mike up here. Mike has been a welfare fraud investigator for decades, I think for the state of New Jersey, if I remember right. I met him up in British Columbia on a Bigfoot trip. I've spent many, many nights in the woods with him, both in Canada and in Washington. I find him to be a stellar human being. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that at least he believes he filmed the Sasquatch. And by the way, I also believe he filmed the Sasquatch, whatever that's worth. I'll go out on that limb and say so. The context of this particular film, he'd been working this spot for 2 years, going to the same campsite, putting bait or offerings, depending on how you look at it, on the same stump, doing the same thing for 2 years, almost every weekend, minimum twice a month. And that sort of repeatability is what one needs to habituate a Sasquatch to your presence. So that's exactly what he'd been doing for years. So he had seen a Sasquatch at this particular campsite the year before through a thermal imager as I was walking down in the gully behind where the campsite is. This particular night, he was the only person in the campground. He heard some noises, you know, down in the gully. He was thinking, well, maybe that's a big guy, I don't know. So he put the only bait he had, which was a Zagnut candy bar, on the stump. And he was trying to think, okay, now what? And he did something really interesting, I think. Something that I've learned a little bit from as well. He left. He removed himself from the situation. He got in his car, he drove to the entrance to the campground, and just sat there and he played solitaire on his phone, I believe. Well, he sat there for about 3 hours because that's the battery life of his thermal imager. He came back to camp. The candy bar was not there. He went to sleep. He went home the next morning, reviewed the footage, and he got a large bipedal figure in the trees, sneaking up, belly crawling, grabbing the bait, going back into the trees, standing up again. And it does an interesting behavior that's been reported a lot of times. It kind of sways back and forth, and it's mostly behind a tree, but you can see head, shoulder, and arm as the thing sways back and forth before it disappears. Unfortunately, it's thermal imaging footage, so you can't see any detail, but you can tell it is either a human or a Bigfoot, clearly, period. So we went there. No one had ever really done a thorough recreation, and unfortunately we still haven't, because too much time has passed. Mike did his best at the time. He thought the thing was about 7.5 feet tall when he did his recreation. When we went there, we used our stand-in Bigfoot, Bobo. He's a big guy. He's about 6'3", 6'4", maybe 290 or something like that. So he tends to get the Bigfoot jobs when we do recreations. And this down here, that's Bobo on the right, and there's Mike's footage on the left. And just so you know, like up here, this is the stump that Mike put the bait on. This tree right here was cut from that stump. In between the time Mike got his footage and now, people have hacked away at the stump. So the stump's a lot smaller than it was back in the day. I measured it, 17 inches wide. It's 18 inches tall. I don't know if those measurements would ever be useful, but I think it's really important to get measurements of everything you do. You never know when some nerd like me is going to come along and try to recreate things, right? This picture here, this is a photograph from where the thermal imager was, looking at the stump in the background. So that's the same stump as right there and there. So when we put Bobo in the spot, again, this is Bobo on the right-hand side. The most interesting thing that I learned from doing this particular recreation was that you could not tell Bobo was wearing clothes. Bobo's a weird guy, but he was in fact wearing clothes when he did that. And I thought that was weird because I've done experiments with myself in a thermal imager, where I ran in the woods fully dressed. I also put on an ape suit, ran around and filmed myself, and then I stripped down to nothing, and then ran around in the woods and filmed myself. Through a thermal imager, please. And from a safe distance. But I have, actually, and then that footage is out there somewhere. You can check my YouTube channel. It's like, well, I'm going to see Cliff naked. But when I was doing that, you could clearly tell I was wearing clothing, but not in this case. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I think it has something to do with the calibration of the internal computer on the thermal imager itself. Because when we were there, it was winter, it was in February, it was freezing. So Mike said it was much warmer when he got the footage. He got the footage in April, I believe, so it makes a little bit of sense. But anyway, you can't see that Bo was wearing clothing, so I don't know, maybe that has something to do with something. Here's the video of the recreation. I'll just let it speak for itself for a minute. I slowed it down, and then I slowed it down again. And that's just Bobo. I wish we had more footage on it. For some reason, the production company did not use the entire footage of Mike's. I wish they did, because there are some very, very compelling parts left out. But that's something I've been learning, because I don't get to see the episodes until you get to see the episodes. I see them for the first time every Sunday night. Every once in a while, a producer might call me that same day and let me know what's coming, in case I need to do damage control or something like that. But in general, I see it at 10 o'clock on Sundays, just like you guys do, so I don't know what's coming either. I wish they would use more of the footage, because again, I think the really compelling part is when the things swing back and forth and you can see the arms dangling, but you know, we get what we get. It was 28 yards between the camera and the stump. The stump is 17 inches in diameter right now. However, at the time the footage was taken, it was 22 inches in diameter. And of course, the stump was 18 inches tall. Maybe that's going to be useful sometime, maybe not. I don't know, but I still think it's important to gather measurements whenever possible. Our next stop was Georgia. Georgia was great, had a great time. The reason we went there is because the police dash cam video. In Lumpkin County, Georgia, a few years back, a police officer was riding. This woman here, her name is Mary Scott, that's her husband. I can't remember his name, unfortunately. Mary